President Trump apparently has a lot on his mind, at least according to his Twitter account. The president started his Monday morning by tweeting about immigration. He bashed Democrats for failing to pass DACA reform and criticized Mexico for not securing the southern border. But that's not all. Mr. Trump also used Twitter to attack Amazon, the U.S. Postal Service, the FBI, Department of Justice, and the news media. For more on this, I want to bring in Niall Stanage. He's a White House columnist for The Hill. He joins me from Washington. Niall, the president has posted 7 tweets about immigration since Sunday. Why is this consuming so much of his energy right now?
Well, one reason appears to be that it is getting media coverage yet again, specifically on one of the president's favourite cable news channels. There has been a lot of coverage devoted to so-called caravans of people coming from Central America toward the southern US border. But I think the broader picture here is one where we don't really know where the programme known as DACA goes from here. It's tied up in the courts right now. It was President Trump, of course, who first made the move to end that programme, but he is now trying to pin blame on Democrats for its potential demise.
So when we look at this as sort of pendulum, right, pinning blame on everybody else, is anything ever going to get done on DACA, at least with the way the situation stands right now?
That's a great question, because one of the interesting things about DACA is that there is actually bipartisan support for the protections in DACA. The stumbling block has been, what should the price be, the political price, to extend those protections or to enshrine them in law? President Trump was suggesting a move to do that, but he wanted the end of the so-called diversity lottery, very strict restrictions placed upon family-based immigration, and $25 billion for his border wall. That was a price that Democrats weren't prepared to pay.
So one of the other topics that the president tweeted about was Sinclair Broadcast Group. The company owns or operates about 193 local TV stations across the country, some of which are CBS affiliates. Sinclair is now facing backlash after video surfaced showing anchors from a number of its stations reading the same scripted message, warning about fake news and promising to report fairly. Here's a portion of that video.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about the trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Niall, the president defended Sinclair on Twitter Monday. He criticized the, quote, fake news network, said Sinclair was superior to CNN and NBC. First of all, where does this statement come from? And why is the president defending it so vigorously?
Well, it appears to come from Sinclair's corporate management or headquarters. I think one of the interesting things about this statement is the substance of what was said is not something that most people would argue with, talking about the importance of balanced news. The problem is that Sinclair has been widely reported to try to impose conservative views on its local stations. The reason the president is defending it, I assume, is partly because Sinclair does lean conservative. He never likes to miss the opportunity to criticise the mainstream media. And even back during the 2016 campaign, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, had alluded to the idea that there was some kind of arrangement struck between the Trump campaign and Sinclair, where Sinclair broadcasters would get some more access in return for, frankly, less critical coverage. So that's all part of this web here.
Ultimately, did the people from that network get more access, sort of a quid pro quo there?
There was a suggestion that they did, in the sense at least of being able to speak to campaign officials. I would have to go back and check whether they got actual interviews with candidate Trump, as he then was. But it certainly wasn't something that Jared Kushner was ashamed of. He was talking about it as an achievement of media management, I think, in his view, even though that's not how most journalists would view such an arrangement.
Now, the Kremlin said Monday that President Trump floated the idea of hosting Vladimir Putin at the White House. Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders acknowledged that Mr. Trump did propose the White House, among other locations. This comes as Russian diplomats, as we know, were expelled from the U.S. after arriving back in Moscow. Why would the president want to meet with Vladimir Putin specifically at the White House.
The president has talked a lot about his belief that a warmer relationship with Russia would be good for the United States and good for the wider world. The problem, of course, as you alluded to in your question, is that it cuts against some of the efforts we're seeing from the international community right now. Those efforts coming in the wake of the poisoning of 2 people in the United Kingdom, one of whom was a former Russian double agent. So this apparent offer, however vaguely it was phrased, seems to cut against the actual announced policies of this administration. And I think that's why it's so perplexing to a great many people.
Certainly a mixed message on that one. Niall Stanage in Washington from the Hill, thank you.
Thank you.